Have you ever wondered why some people seem to carry peace wherever they go, while others seem to carry a storm? Maybe you've tried to be kind, to do what's right, but life still pushes back. Pain still finds you. Obstacles still come, and deep inside, you ask, what am I doing wrong? The Buddha gave us a path, a way to live so that peace isn't just something you chase, but something you become. It begins with one powerful step, right action. Not just good intentions, not just avoiding mistakes, but knowing exactly what kinds of actions create good karma, and which ones keep us stuck in the cycle of suffering. In this video, we're going to explore the heart of karma, the meaning of right action, and most importantly, how to live it, starting right now. Because your next moment, your next life, begins with what you choose today. You're here because, in some way, you've already felt it. That inner pull, that whisper inside that says, I want to do better. I want to live in a way that brings peace, not only to others, but to myself. And yet, even with that intention, it's so easy to feel lost. What does it actually mean to live rightly? How do we know we're walking the right path? That's where the Buddha's teachings shine with stunning clarity. The first thing to understand is this: peace is not something that randomly falls into our lives. It's not something we earn through luck, or even just by hoping for it. Peace is the natural result of karma, of our actions. Our choices, moment to moment, shape the reality we live in. And in this very moment, you are shaping your future. That may sound heavy, but it's actually one of the most liberating truths the Buddha revealed. You're not stuck. You're not at the mercy of fate. You're not a prisoner of your past. You have, right now, the power to plant seeds that will bear the fruit of freedom, of joy, of deep spiritual clarity. But to do that, we must understand right action. Right action isn't just about avoiding what's wrong. It's about aligning our actions with wisdom, with compassion, with mindfulness. The Buddha didn't give vague ideas, he gave precise guidance. And he placed right action right at the heart of the Noble Eightfold Path, the way out of suffering. So let's begin with a question. Why right action, and why now? Because karma is not delayed. It's not something that waits for your next life. It's happening now. Every choice you make carries an energy, a vibration. Whether you speak kindly or harshly, whether you take what isn't yours or act with generosity, whether you help or harm, the universe records it. Not in a book, not in the clouds, but in your consciousness. Every action becomes part of who you are. Right action matters now because life is uncertain. We don't know how many breaths we have left, but we do know this: the way we live determines the quality of our next moment, our next lifetime, and ultimately, our liberation. Right action is the path to peace. It's also the answer to many of the questions we carry silently. Why do some people live with ease, while others suffer deeply? Why are some born into comfort, others into poverty or pain? From a Buddhist perspective, these aren't accidents. They're the ripened fruits of past actions, seeds planted long ago. Sometimes in this life, sometimes many lifetimes back. So if we want to create a better world, for ourselves and for others, we must begin with our actions. But let's be honest, doing what's right isn't always easy. Sometimes, we know the right thing, but we hesitate. Fear stops us. Comfort seduces us. We think, it's just one small lie. Or, no one will know. But the truth is, you will know. And that knowing shapes your karma. Because every time you betray your own sense of right and wrong, you weaken your inner clarity. You fog your vision. You drift further from peace. But every time you act with integrity, even when no one's watching, you strengthen your soul. You clarify your path. You start to live from a place of inner trust. That's what right action gives us. Not just good karma in the future, but deep confidence in the present. And it begins not with big, heroic acts, but with the small, daily choices. choosing not to speak harshly when you're angry, choosing not to take something that isn't freely offered, choosing not to hurt others for your own gain. These may seem simple, even obvious, but how often do we slip? How often do we justify harmful behavior because we feel hurt, or entitled, or afraid? The Buddha understood this deeply. That's why he didn't simply say, "Be good." He gave us specific guidelines for right action. 3 in particular: do not kill, do not steal, do not engage in sexual misconduct. These are not commandments. They are practices, living invitations to reflect on our impact. To not kill is not only about refraining from murder, it's about respecting all life. It's about choosing not to harm. Whether it's a mosquito, an animal, or another human being, it's about honoring the sacredness of life itself. To not steal isn't only about robbing banks. It's about not taking what isn't freely given, whether it's money, time, or even emotional energy. It's about respecting boundaries. To avoid sexual misconduct is not a Puritan rule, it's about acting with respect, consent, and care in our relationships. It's about not using our desires to manipulate or harm. These guidelines are not meant to shame. They are meant to free us from guilt, from regret, from the heavy weight of unskillful karma. When we live in this way, we begin to feel lighter. Our relationships improve, our mind becomes quieter, and when we sit down to meditate, we're not haunted by the past, we're supported by it. Because good karma doesn't just affect your next life. It affects how you sleep tonight, how you speak tomorrow, how you handle stress next week. That's why right action matters now. And yet, many of us feel overwhelmed. How can I do everything right all the time? You might ask. The answer is, you don't have to be perfect. You just have to be sincere. The Buddha didn't teach perfectionism. He taught practice. And every moment is a chance to practice right action again. If you slip, return. If you forget, remember. If you hurt someone, make amends. That itself is right action, to recognize our missteps and choose better. There is profound dignity in that, a spiritual courage, and the more we practice, the more our actions align naturally with the Dharma. Kindness becomes instinct. Honesty becomes our baseline. Compassion becomes the language we speak, not just with words, but with presence. That is the power of karma. It's not fate. It's not punishment. It's the invisible law of cause and effect that governs the quality of our mind and the shape of our life. And you have the power to work with it. Right here, right now. By choosing to live more mindfully, more ethically, more compassionately, you set in motion something extraordinary. You shift not only your future, but your present. You become a source of peace, not just for yourself, but for everyone who crosses your path. And that is where true spiritual joy begins. You might be wondering now, if right action is so essential. What exactly does it mean? We touched on it briefly. The Buddha gave us guidelines. Yes, but to truly live this teaching, we must understand it not just with the mind, but with the heart. We must see how it works in real life, not just in scriptures or stories. Let's begin again with the root of the word, right, in right action. In Pali, it's samma, which doesn't just mean morally right or socially acceptable. It means aligned, harmonious, free from distortion. Right action, then, means action that's aligned with reality, with wisdom, with compassion, with truth. It's not just what you do. It's why you do it, and how you do it. Take for example, giving money to someone in need. That could be right action, or not, if you do it with a heart full of judgment or pride. The karma is mixed, but if you give with humility, care, and no expectation, the action is clean. The energy it plants in your mind is pure. Right action begins not with the hand, but with intention. That's why the Buddha emphasized sadhana, intention, as the seed of karma. Two people can do the same thing outwardly, but generate completely different karmic results depending on the motivation behind the action. So before asking, is this action good or bad? Ask, what's my state of mind? If it's angry, greedy, self-centered, or confused, pause. That's not the mind that creates good karma. But if your action comes from a place of clarity, compassion, and care for others, it's very likely aligned with right action. This doesn't mean you'll always know perfectly, but it means you start checking in, more and more, with your inner compass. You stop acting from impulse or ego. You start acting from awareness. That's the transformation right action brings. It turns your entire life into practice. It gives meaning to even small, everyday choices. Suddenly, holding the door open for someone, speaking gently to your child, or choosing honesty over comfort, these are no longer small things. They are steps on the path to liberation. And there's something empowering about that. You don't need to wait for a temple. You don't need to be ordained. You don't need to leave your job or your family. You can walk the Buddha's path right now, through your actions. But let's return to the Buddha's own words, because he was clear about what right action includes. In the Noble Eightfold Path, the Buddha described right action as refraining from three specific things. First, taking life. Second, taking what is not given. Third, sexual misconduct. These may sound ancient, even overly strict, but if we look deeper, we'll see their wisdom and their profound relevance in our modern world. Let's begin with the first one, not taking life. At its core, this means practicing non-harming. It means cultivating a deep reverence for life in all its forms, not just human life, but animal life, insect life, even the life of ecosystems. It doesn't mean we never swat a mosquito or never eat meat. Necessarily, it means we begin to wake up to the impact of our actions. We begin to ask, does this action bring suffering? Or does it bring safety, peace, and respect? Sometimes, we cause harm without meaning to. We step on an ant without seeing it. Or we speak sharply to someone without realizing how deeply it wounds them. That's part of being human. But right action invites us to become more aware, to slow down, to pay attention, to act from care. The second guideline is about not stealing, not taking what isn't freely given. Again, it seems obvious, but this too goes deeper than we might think. It's not just about shoplifting. It's about not taking credit that doesn't belong to you. It's about not taking up someone's time without gratitude. It's about not exploiting people's trust. It's about honoring what belongs to others, not just physically, but emotionally and energetically. In a world that prizes competition and personal gain, right action reminds us to move differently, to choose fairness over profit, to honor boundaries, to live in a way that's generous, not grasping. And the third, sexual misconduct. This is a deeply misunderstood concept. Some people think it means being celibate, or repressing desire. But the Buddha wasn't asking us to deny our humanity. He was inviting us to uplift it. Sexual misconduct, in Buddhism, means causing harm through sexuality, using desire to deceive, manipulate, control, or betray. It means engaging in relationships that involve coercion, dishonesty, or betrayal of trust. Right action in this realm means respecting others deeply, not using intimacy to feed your ego, but to build connection, trust, and love. It means being honest, being kind, being aware of the impact your actions have, not just on your partner, but on their family, their emotional well-being, and your own conscience. When we begin to live with these three principles, not harming, not stealing, not abusing sexuality, we begin to create a life that's clean, open, and light. We stop planting seeds of regret and start planting seeds of peace. And that's just the beginning. Because right action doesn't stop at refraining from harm. That's the foundation, but the full expression of right action is active. It's about doing good, helping someone in need, speaking up for the voiceless, volunteering your time, caring for the earth, practicing generosity. All these are part of right action. The Buddha said, abandon evil, cultivate the good, purify the mind. This is the teaching of all Buddhas. Right action is that middle part, cultivating the good. And when you do, you don't just create good karma for the future. You begin to experience joy now. There's a particular kind of happiness that comes from knowing your actions are clean. It's not loud, it's not showy, but it's deep. It's the joy of self-respect. The joy of not needing to hide anything. The joy of going to bed at night with a quiet heart. That joy is priceless, and it becomes your foundation for spiritual growth. When your actions are clean, your mind settles more easily. When your mind settles, meditation becomes easier. When meditation becomes easier, wisdom begins to arise. And when wisdom arises, liberation becomes possible. That's why the Buddha didn't teach right meditation first. He taught right action, because it's what purifies the mind. In fact, in the traditional Buddhist order, monks and nuns take precepts, vows that are essentially guidelines for right action. These aren't limitations, they are freedoms. Freedoms from guilt, regret, restlessness, and confusion. You don't need to take vows to live this way. But you do need commitment. And you need to begin now. Because every moment you act unskillfully, you strengthen that habit. And every moment you act skillfully, you shift your karma. So ask yourself, what actions am I repeating? Are they aligned with kindness, truth, and peace? Or are they driven by fear, greed, and confusion? You may not be able to change the past, but you can absolutely change the pattern. That's the power of right action. And it's always available. In your next breath, in your next word, in your next choice. Let it begin now. By now, you've begun to see how much weight your actions truly carry. They're not just ripples, they're seeds. And every seed will sprout. That's the teaching of karma. But what exactly is karma? And how does it respond to our actions so precisely? Let's look at karma in a way that's more than just cause and effect. Because while karma is often simplified into do good, get good, or do bad, get bad, the Buddha taught something far more subtle, more profound. Karma, at its core, is intention in motion. It's not just what you do, but what fuels the doing. And that's why your smallest choices, the things you say, the tone you use, even the thoughts you dwell on, are so powerful. Because they all carry intention. If you imagine your mind like a garden, then karma is the act of planting. Right action is planting with care, with mindfulness, with the clear recognition that what grows will be a reflection of what was sown. When you plant seeds of anger through shouting, criticizing, or harming, they may feel powerful in the moment, but they will ripen into suffering. They create mental patterns that are harder to reverse. They damage trust, both within yourself and in your relationships. But when you plant seeds of patience, honesty, and generosity, you're cultivating a field of future peace. You're laying down neural pathways of compassion. You're teaching your mind to rest, to love, to let go. And here's the thing. Karma never loses track. You might think, no one saw what I did. Or, it was just a thought. Or even, I didn't mean to. But your mind knows. And it stores every experience, every action, every word, every motive, as impressions. These impressions shape your consciousness. They color the way you see the world. They determine how you react when life doesn't go your way. That's why people with similar lives can feel so differently. One person lives with deep gratitude, while another lives with resentment. One sees opportunity, another only threat. The difference isn't just external, it's karmic. It's what's been planted, cultivated, and watered over time. So when we talk about creating good karma, we're not talking about some mystical system of reward and punishment. We're talking about transforming the very soil of your being. Right action is like compost for the soul. It enriches the field of your future experiences. It gives rise to a mind that is easier to live with, and a life that flows with more clarity. But here's where many people get stuck. They think karma is too big, too slow, too delayed to care about right now. If I don't see the results immediately, why does it matter? They ask. This is a misunderstanding. Not all karma ripens slowly. Some karma is instant. When you say something cruel, you might instantly feel tension in your chest, or guilt in your stomach. That's karma in real time. When you help someone from a sincere place, you might feel warmth, lightness, a kind of subtle joy. That too is karma in motion. And yet, some karma does take time. Just like a seed planted in winter might not bloom until spring. Certain actions take months or even lifetimes to ripen, but they never disappear. They remain in the storehouse of consciousness, waiting for the right conditions to sprout. The Buddha described this clearly. He said that karma is like a shadow that follows you everywhere. And depending on the quality of your actions, that shadow can either darken your days or protect you with peace. Now let's bring this down to daily life. How does right action shape your actual, lived experience? Let's say you have a difficult coworker. You could respond to their attitude with sarcasm, gossip, or coldness. That might feel justified, but what are you really planting? You're reinforcing resentment, you're strengthening conflict, and most of all, you're disturbing your own mind. Now imagine instead that you pause. You breathe. You choose to respond with clarity. Maybe even kindness. That doesn't mean you ignore harmful behavior, but it means you address it with skill, not reactivity. In that moment, you're creating good karma, not just for the future, but for the present. Your nervous system stays calmer. Your heart stays lighter. You walk away with dignity. That's the power of right action, not only to change your future, but to free your present. And it works the other way too. When you repeatedly act from fear, from greed, from anger, you create a self that is ruled by those forces. Over time, it becomes harder to trust others, harder to forgive, harder to feel joy. It's not that the world is cruel, it's that you've trained your mind to expect cruelty. That's why karma is not just a cosmic ledger. It's a training ground. Every time you act skillfully, you train your mind in peace. Every time you act unskillfully, you train it in suffering. This is why the Buddha placed so much emphasis on practice. He didn't just tell people to believe in karma. He told them to observe it, to see for themselves how their actions affected their minds, their relationships, their clarity. And when you start watching closely, you begin to notice the patterns. When you speak truthfully, your mind feels aligned. When you lie, even a small one, you carry tension. When you act with compassion, you feel expansive. When you act with cruelty, you shrink. The evidence is right there. But we have to be still enough, honest enough, and curious enough to notice. And sometimes, even with the best intentions, we mess up. That's okay. The goal is not perfection, it's awareness. When you realize you've hurt someone, apologize. When you recognize a habit of selfishness, practice generosity. When you notice jealousy rising, reflect on its root. Every time you catch yourself, every time you return to right action, you build momentum toward awakening. Because here's the secret: karma is flexible. You can change your trajectory. You can plant new seeds. You can water the good ones and starve the bad. And it all begins with your next action. You don't need to change your whole life overnight. Just your next choice. And then the next one. And then the next. Right action is not a performance. It's not about being seen as a good person. It's about living with integrity, even when no one's watching. It's about coming home at the end of the day and knowing you caused no harm. That you made someone's burden lighter. That you showed up with sincerity. That kind of life builds a foundation so stable, so clear, that even when storms come, and they will, you remain grounded. And over time, this practice becomes your nature. You don't have to think so hard about doing the right thing, it becomes automatic. Like a tree naturally growing toward the light, you begin to live in alignment. This is the fruit of good karma. It's not just external success, it's internal freedom. And the beautiful thing is, you're not starting from zero. Every time you've been kind, honest, generous, that energy is still alive in you. It's still shaping your life in subtle ways. And with every right action from here forward, you strengthen that field. You nourish the seeds of awakening. So don't wait for a better time. Don't wait until you feel worthy. You're already on the path. Let today be the day you choose to walk it fully. Let today be the day you begin to act, not from fear, but from wisdom, not from habit, but from clarity, not for applause, but for peace. Right action is not far away. It's the very next thing you do. Right action isn't just a concept we think about while sitting on a meditation cushion or reading a book of teachings. It's something we live, something we embody, at work, at home, in the store, in traffic, in conversation. And that's what makes it both challenging and beautiful. In the quiet of retreat, it's easier to feel peaceful. But the real test, the real practice, is in the moments we don't expect. When someone cuts you off in traffic, when your child screams in the middle of the night, when a coworker takes credit for your idea, in those moments, we are given a powerful choice. We can act from habit, from ego, from reactivity, or we can act from the Dharma. But how? How can we bring the clarity of right action into the chaos of ordinary life? It begins with remembering this. Right action isn't just about what you do, but how you meet the moment. Your attitude, your presence, your willingness to pause, these are the foundations. Imagine you're in a tense conversation. Someone is speaking aggressively. Maybe they're criticizing you unfairly. Your first instinct might be to defend, to interrupt, to snap back. That's the habitual mind. That's the self trying to protect its image. But if you pause, breathe, and recognize, this is a moment to practice right action, then you've already changed the energy. Instead of adding more aggression to the fire, you bring stillness. Instead of reacting, you respond. This doesn't mean you let people walk all over you. Practicing right action isn't about being passive. It's about being skillful. Sometimes, the most compassionate response is firm. Sometimes it's silence. Sometimes it's truth spoken with clarity. But what makes it right is that it's not driven by ego. It's rooted in wisdom and care. In daily life, we often move quickly, from one task to another. We're busy, we're distracted, and when we're distracted, we slip into automatic behaviors, many of which don't serve us or others. So the first step in living right action daily is mindfulness. When you're present, you notice more. You notice your tone of voice. You notice the tension in your chest. You notice the urge to lie, or to exaggerate, or to cut corners. And in that noticing, you reclaim your freedom. You realize, I don't have to act this way. That moment of awareness is golden. It's the gap where transformation lives. The Buddha often emphasized the unity of body, speech, and mind. Right action flows from this unity. What you think, what you say, and what you do, when they're in harmony, your life becomes lighter, your relationships become more genuine, your sense of self becomes more peaceful. Let's explore what right action might look like in a few common areas of modern life. At work, most of us spend a huge portion of our lives working. Whether it's at an office, a restaurant, a hospital, or at home, the workplace is full of karmic opportunities. Do you take shortcuts because everyone else does? Do you speak poorly of colleagues behind their backs? Do you stretch the truth on reports or invoices? Each of these actions might seem small, but they leave a residue in the mind, a sense of inner division. Even if no one else sees it, you do, and that self-knowledge shapes your karma. Right action at work might mean speaking honestly, even when it's uncomfortable. It might mean giving credit to others. It might mean doing the right thing even if it costs you time, praise, or money. And while that may feel hard in the moment, the long-term effect is powerful: a clear conscience, a trustworthy reputation, and deep self-respect. In your relationships, romantic relationships, friendships, family, all of these are spiritual grounds for right action. Are you honest with your partner? Are you faithful in thought and deed? Do you listen with your whole presence, or only enough to plan your response? Do you say things you don't mean, just to get your way? Do you manipulate with silence or guilt? These are all forms of unwholesome karma, not just because they hurt others, but because they fracture the heart. Right action in relationships means showing up with sincerity. It means apologizing when you've caused harm. It means choosing kindness over winning, presence over performance. And when you live this way, relationships become less about need and more about shared growth. In moments of conflict, it's easy to act rightly when everyone is kind and calm. But in moments of conflict, your practice is tested. That's when the ego wants to control, to dominate, to protect itself at all costs. But the Dharma gives you a different path. Next time you feel attacked, pause, feel the heat in your chest, breathe into it, remind yourself, this is a karmic crossroad. You can lash out, or you can respond with integrity. And when you do respond with integrity, you not only avoid creating negative karma, you also shift the energy of the situation. Sometimes, your calmness will bring calm to the other. Sometimes not, but either way, you remain free. In your consumer habits, in today's world, we are constantly buying, consuming, using, and every act of consumption is also an act of karma. What kind of companies do you support with your money? Are their practices ethical? Do they exploit others, harm animals, destroy the earth? Right action means becoming more conscious of the impact your choices have, not just on your life, but on the systems you participate in. This doesn't mean becoming extreme or rigid. It means beginning to align your values with your actions, even in the small things. Choosing local when possible, choosing cruelty-free, choosing less waste. Each of these actions is a vote for a kinder world, and they shape your karmic field. In how you speak, speech is one of the most powerful forms of action. With just a few words, you can lift someone up, or break their spirit. Right speech is a core part of right action. It means speaking truthfully, kindly, and with purpose. It means avoiding gossip, harsh words, idle chatter, and deceit. It doesn't mean you never speak firmly, but it does mean you speak with care. So before you speak, ask, is it true? Is it kind? Is it necessary? You don't need to be perfect, but you can practice. And every time you catch yourself before saying something harmful, you reinforce your commitment to peace. In how you care for your body and mind, right action also includes the way you treat yourself. Are you harsh with yourself when you make mistakes? Do you push your body beyond its limits? Do you numb out with distractions or addictions? The Buddha taught that self-care is not selfish, it's essential. Because when your body is sick, or your mind is clouded, your ability to act rightly is weakened. So caring for yourself, eating well, resting enough, meditating, setting boundaries, is part of right action. Not because it makes you better, but because it creates the conditions for clarity. And clarity is the ground of compassion. So wherever you go, whether you're sweeping the floor or closing a deal, raising a child or caring for an aging parent, right action can be your path. It's not separate from your life. It is your life. And when you bring mindfulness, honesty, and compassion into your everyday actions, you don't need to search for meaning. You become the meaning. You don't need to seek out peace. You become peace. Wherever you go. Right action is not a ladder you climb. It's a way of walking. Step by step. Choice by choice. You align your life with the truth of interconnection. You begin to see that every action, no matter how small, touches the whole. That's the beauty. That's the responsibility. And that's the gift. Let the next thing you do today reflect the deepest part of you. The part that wants to live with love, clarity, and no regrets. Because when your actions are right, your path is clear. And when your path is clear, every step becomes sacred. If you've come this far, it means something inside you is already aligned with right action. That voice that says, I want to live with more clarity, more purpose, more peace, that voice is not weak or naive. It's your wisdom waking up. But now comes the harder part. How do we sustain right action when things get messy? When life doesn't go our way? When people hurt us? Or when the world feels chaotic, unfair, even cruel? This is where many people give up. They think, what's the point of doing good if the world doesn't seem to change? Or, why try to be kind when others just take advantage? Or, I've already made too many mistakes, maybe I don't deserve peace. But here's the truth the Buddha taught. Right action is never wasted. Even if no one notices. Even if others don't return the favor. Even if it feels like nothing changes on the outside. The act itself shapes your consciousness. It becomes part of who you are. It brings you closer to a mind that is unshakable. You may not be able to control how others respond to your kindness. But you can control whether your heart becomes bitter or free. And you free your heart through right action. Again and again. Let's start with the hardest question. What if I've done wrong? What if you've hurt someone deeply? What if you've lied, cheated, acted with cruelty or selfishness? What if you carry the weight of shame or regret? This is where many people feel stuck. They feel defined by their past. But the Buddha was clear. The past does not define you. What defines you is your willingness to wake up, to take responsibility, and to plant new seeds. Even a forest fire that burned thousands of trees begins to heal when a single seed takes root again. In the same way, your past unskillful actions are not the end of your story. They're a turning point. They're the moment when your understanding deepens. When you begin to ask not, how do I avoid pain, but, how do I live in truth? And that shift is where healing begins. So what can you do with the weight of past karma? First, acknowledge it. Be honest with yourself. Don't justify. Don't explain it away. Simply say, yes, I caused harm. I was unconscious. I was afraid. I was confused. But I see it now. And I will not turn away. Second, feel the impact. Not to punish yourself, but to stay connected. To understand what suffering your actions created in others. This is the beginning of true compassion. Third, make amends where possible. This doesn't mean forcing forgiveness or reopening old wounds. But it means owning your part. It means saying, I'm sorry, without expectation. It means quietly correcting the damage where you can. And fourth, and most importantly, change your behavior. Choose differently from now on. Let your regret fuel your commitment to right action. Let it become the fire that burns away your old patterns. That's what redemption looks like in the Dharma. Not perfection, but transformation. And here's something powerful. The deeper your regret, the more fertile your heart becomes for right action. Why? Because you know the cost of causing harm. You've felt it. You've lived it. And now, every step you take toward kindness carries more meaning. So don't let your past pull you backward. Let it push you forward. You are not your mistakes. You are your intention now. And now let's look at another difficulty. Staying on the path when others are not. Maybe you're the only one in your family or friend circle trying to live more ethically. Maybe others mock your values. Maybe they take your kindness as weakness. Maybe they try to pull you back into habits you've outgrown. This is where courage comes in. The Buddha called this right effort, the steady. Inner strength to stay true even when the world pushes in the other direction. You are not responsible for others' choices. You are responsible for your own integrity. It might feel lonely at times, but every time you choose right action over fitting in, you strengthen something far more valuable than social approval. You strengthen your Dharma muscles. You begin to walk with quiet confidence. And eventually, people notice, maybe not right away, but they feel something different in you. A presence, a calm, a consistency. That's the power of a life lived with right action. You become someone others can trust, not just because of what you say, but because of what you do, day after day. And that kind of person is rare. That kind of person becomes a light in the dark. Now, one of the most underestimated truths in all of Buddhist practice is this: small actions matter. You don't need to change the world. Just the next 5 minutes. Right action isn't about grand gestures. It's about holding your tongue when angry, returning the shopping cart, smiling at the cashier, choosing to recycle, taking 3 conscious breaths before responding. These aren't just polite behaviors. They're spiritual practices. They're acts of respect, not just for others, but for the sacredness of life. The Buddha said that the ocean is made of drops, and so is your karma. Every drop of goodness adds to the ocean of your awakening. But there's something else we must talk about now. There will be times, no matter how much you practice right action, when life will still hurt. You will still lose people you love. You will still face illness. You will still feel fear. And in those moments, you may wonder, what's the point of all this effort? The point is this: right action doesn't prevent all suffering, but it prepares you for it. It gives you a foundation so stable that even in the face of pain, you don't collapse. You respond with clarity instead of panic, with compassion instead of blame. You grieve with openness instead of shutting down. That is the fruit of right action. It's not always visible from the outside, but inside, you'll feel it. You'll know that you didn't add to the suffering. You'll know that you moved through it with grace. And that knowing, that quiet dignity, is a deep kind of freedom. So don't be discouraged when things don't go perfectly. This is not a path of perfection, it's a path of sincerity. Every day you wake up and recommit, you're on the path. Every time you fall and get up again, you're on the path. Every time you choose compassion over pride, truth over convenience, peace over drama, you're walking the path. And the beautiful thing is, this path is alive. It responds to your sincerity. The more you practice right action, the more joy arises, the more clarity, the more lightness in your body and mind. You begin to feel less fragmented, less reactive, less confused. You begin to trust yourself. And that trust becomes your refuge, no matter what life throws at you. Because the one thing no one can take from you is the dignity of a heart that chooses right action. And here's what's even more amazing: your practice doesn't just benefit you. Every time you choose right action, you're contributing to the collective consciousness of humanity. You're making the world just a little less harsh, a little more kind. You're creating ripples that reach far beyond what you can see. One act of patience can prevent a fight. One act of honesty can inspire another. One act of generosity can restore faith. So never underestimate your impact. Even if you never know how far your goodness travels, trust that it does. The universe is listening, life is listening, and your actions are speaking louder than you think. So what now? Keep going. Keep planting good seeds. Keep acting not from fear, but from love, not from habit, but from wisdom, not for applause, but for peace. Because in the end, your actions will be the story of your life. Let it be a story you're proud to tell. Let it be a path that leads not just to success, but to awakening. And let it begin again. Now, with the very next thing you do. You've now seen that right action is not just about morality, it's about liberation. It's about setting yourself free from cycles of suffering that have repeated for years, maybe lifetimes. The way we act is not just creating the world around us, but the world within us. And at this point, the question naturally arises: how do we go even deeper? How do we not just choose right action from time to time, but make it the very texture of how we live? It begins with this understanding: right action is not a set of fixed behaviors. It's a way of being, a tone of consciousness, a devotion to presence. And like anything profound, it requires nurturing. To deepen your practice, the first thing you must do is cultivate continuous awareness, not just in meditation, but in the flow of your daily life. This awareness becomes the mirror in which your actions are seen clearly. It shows you the subtle moments when you're tempted to act from ego. It gives you the power to interrupt that pattern and choose again. Right action grows in the light of this awareness. When you begin to see your own mind, moment by moment, something powerful happens. You catch yourself before the lie is spoken. You notice the sharpness before the words are released. You feel the greed tightening before the hand reaches out. This is not repression. This is freedom. Because now, your actions come from wisdom, not compulsion. But to sustain this, we need something deeper than willpower. We need intention. The Buddha taught that everything begins with intention, what we call sadhana in Pali. It's the internal spark that gives shape to our words and deeds. And if our intention is confused, our actions will be too. But if our intention is rooted in kindness, clarity, and compassion, then even difficult actions can become right actions. So take time each morning to remember your intention. Before checking your phone, before stepping into the world, ask yourself, how do I want to live today? Not in grand, abstract terms, but concretely. Do I want to cause harm? Or do I want to bring peace? Do I want to act from fear? Or from love? This simple practice begins to rewire your consciousness. And that brings us to the next layer. Right action as purification. Sometimes, people think right action is just about gaining good karma. Like a spiritual bank account, more good deeds equals more blessings. But the Buddha pointed to something more profound. He taught that right action is a way of cleansing the mind. It's a method of burning off the seeds of greed, hatred, and delusion that have accumulated within us. When you act kindly, especially when it's hard, you're not just helping someone, you're cutting through your own aversion. When you act generously, even when you feel a lack, you're weakening the grip of attachment. When you speak the truth, even when afraid, you're dissolving the roots of fear. Right action is not just a path to better outcomes. It's a path to no more inner war. It's a return to simplicity. Imagine a life where you don't have to remember your lies, where you don't have to hide your actions, where your conscience is clear and your energy is light. That's not just peace. That's power. That's unshakable confidence, not built on pride, but on alignment. And that's where we now turn. The connection between right action and spiritual confidence. So many people today live in a state of low-grade anxiety, even when life looks fine on the surface. Why? Because deep down, there's a gap between what they know is right and what they actually do. And that gap generates restlessness. It erodes inner trust. But when you live in alignment, even imperfectly, you begin to trust yourself again. You begin to stand tall. Not because of ego, but because of integrity. And this integrity is not cold. It's not rigid. It's warm. It flows into your relationships. It brings gentleness to your speech. It brings patience to your parenting. It brings grace to your leadership. People around you may not know the teachings of the Buddha, but they will feel the teachings through your actions. You become a living Dharma. You become a reminder to others that it's possible to live a life of truth without becoming brittle. To be strong without being harsh. To be wise without losing heart. And when life brings challenge, as it always does, right action becomes your anchor. Let's talk about suffering again. Even when you practice right action, suffering will arise. You'll still lose loved ones. You'll still get sick. People will still disappoint you. Your mind will still wander into fear, doubt, and confusion. But here's what changes: how you meet those moments. Instead of acting from reactivity, you begin to act from stability. Instead of spinning stories of blame, you begin to act from acceptance. Instead of shutting down, you stay open. And sometimes, the most radical act of right action is simply this: staying present when it would be easier to run. When you choose not to numb out, not to escape, but to breathe and respond with care, you are practicing right action in its purest form. And this practice becomes especially vital in a world that so often pulls us toward unconsciousness. A world of instant gratification, endless distractions, and reward for aggression. In that kind of world, right action becomes a quiet revolution. It's not flashy. It doesn't shout, but it transforms from the inside out. When you choose to act kindly instead of seeking praise, you subvert the ego. When you choose to give rather than hoard, you break the trance of scarcity. When you choose to tell the truth, even when it's uncomfortable, you break the cycle of illusion. Each act of right action becomes a thread in a new kind of life, one rooted in depth, in meaning, in reality. And soon, you realize, right action is not separate from right view, or right intention, or right mindfulness. They are all threads in one fabric. They strengthen each other. They feed each other. And together, they lead to liberation. Now let's turn to something more subtle, but essential: the joy of right action. We often think of discipline as heavy, or moral choices as burdensome. But the truth is, nothing brings more joy than a life lived in alignment. There is a quiet joy in choosing restraint over indulgence. A bright joy in speaking a kind word instead of a harsh one. A deep joy in helping someone who will never repay you. These joys are not flashy. They don't create dopamine spikes like a new purchase or a social media like. But they are lasting. They mature in the heart. They echo in your dreams. They become the kind of peace you carry into old age. The Buddha taught that the highest happiness comes from non-harming. And when you look back at your life, it won't be your achievements that give you the deepest satisfaction. It will be the moments you acted rightly when no one was watching. The forgiveness you gave freely. The truth you spoke bravely. The love you expressed without attachment. These are the moments that leave no regret. These are the moments that follow you beyond this life. Because right action doesn't just shape this life. It shapes what comes next. Your karma doesn't die when your body dies. It travels with your consciousness. It creates the conditions for your next becoming. And if you want to step into that next life with lightness, with clarity, with momentum toward awakening, it begins here. With the next word you say, with the next decision you make, with the next step you take. That's the miracle of this path. You're never too late to begin. And you're never too far gone to return. Right action is not reserved for saints. It's available to you, in this very breath. And it's the most powerful gift you can give, not only to the world, but to yourself. So let your life be your practice. Let your days be your temple. Let your actions sing your awakening. Right here, right now. So now we've walked this path together. From the first spark of understanding what right action truly is, through the trials and joys of living it moment to moment, we've looked at how it's not just a moral code, but a living expression of inner freedom. Not just a set of rules, but the natural outflow of a wise and compassionate heart. And here, as we arrive at the final stretch of our journey, a deeper question begins to emerge. What kind of world do you want to live in? Because every action you take either supports the world as it is, or helps build the world as it could be. The Buddha didn't just offer a way to reduce suffering in the personal sense. He offered a blueprint for an awakened society. And right action is at the very core of that vision. A world where people act from love instead of fear. Where they tell the truth even when it costs them something. Where they give even when they feel they don't have much. Where they show up for one another, not out of obligation, but because compassion moves them. This is not a fantasy. It is a possibility, but it starts with you. Right now. In your body. In your choices. When you take responsibility for your actions, you take back your power. No longer blaming others. No longer waiting for the world to change. You become the change. Not in theory. In practice. Not with slogans. With silence and integrity. And that's how transformation begins, not with a revolution outside, but with a revolution inside. The person who chooses right action becomes a sanctuary in a chaotic world. They create ripples without shouting. They plant seeds without needing recognition. They do the work silently, faithfully, one conscious choice at a time. If you've ever felt that the world is too broken to fix, remember this. The Buddha did not wait for the world to become peaceful before he acted with peace. He became peace, and the world around him transformed. You have that same potential. And the way you live matters more than you think. So let's go deeper still. There's one more aspect of right action we haven't talked about enough. And that is, right action is a sacred offering. Every action, every word, every gesture, every thought, is a kind of offering to the universe. The way you wash the dishes, the way you greet a stranger, the way you sit with someone in pain, none of it is ordinary. When done with mindfulness, even the simplest act becomes holy. You don't need incense or chants to create a sacred life. You just need sincerity. You just need presence. You just need to remember that this moment, this one right here, is not coming back. So how will you meet it? Will you rush through it? Reactively? Distracted? Or will you bow to it? Not physically, but inwardly. Bow to it with your care, with your attention, with your decision to act rightly, even when no one sees. This is the essence of a spiritual life. Not somewhere far away, not something separate from daily living, but the deep understanding that how you live is your spirituality. And once you see this, your life begins to shine, not in a flashy way, but with a quiet radiance, the kind that draws others near. Not because you're trying to be someone, but because you're being yourself, fully, truthfully, compassionately. This is the fruit of right action. It's not just about making fewer mistakes. It's about coming home to yourself. About walking through this world with open eyes, an open heart, and hands ready to serve. Because service is the highest form of right action. Not service from obligation, but from the joy of giving. When your life becomes an offering, not just to your family or friends, but to all beings, then your actions start to carry the weight of the Dharma itself. You become a living vessel of the teachings. And without even realizing it, you become a light for others. And what about when it's hard? What about when you feel tired, discouraged, or alone? That's when the teachings become real. It's easy to be kind when things are easy. But right action doesn't ask for ease. It asks for truthfulness, for courage, for the willingness to show up again and again, even when you don't feel like it. Especially when you don't feel like it. There's a beautiful phrase in the Dhammapada. Even as a solid rock is unshaken by the wind, so are the wise unshaken by praise or blame. When you practice right action long enough, this kind of steadiness begins to grow in you. You're no longer swayed so much by what others think. You no longer live just to be liked. You begin to live from your own center. And that is a freedom that no one can take away. Now take a moment. Really feel this. Right action is not about being a good person. It's about being a free person. Free from guilt. Free from hiding. Free from needing to pretend. Free from the exhausting dance of trying to control everything. When you act rightly, you can sleep at night. When you act rightly, your body relaxes. When you act rightly, You stand with the ancestors who chose the light. And you become a path maker for those who will come after you. Even if your name is forgotten. Even if no one remembers what you did. Your actions live on. In someone's lighter heart. In someone's quieter mind. In someone's moment of choosing love because they once saw you do it. And so this is where we end, not with fanfare, but with stillness, with a single, sacred reminder. Right action is available now. Not tomorrow. Not when you're less busy. Not when you've read more books or healed all your trauma. Right now. In the way you respond to the next email. In the way you greet the next human being. In the way you hold your next thought. That's the invitation. Not to become perfect, but to become present. Not to get everything right, but to live from what's real. And every time you do, you return to the truth. The truth that your life matters. The truth that your actions echo. The truth that this moment is not ordinary. It is your opportunity to awaken. And so may you go forth, not just inspired, but engaged. Not just moved, but committed. Let your life be a field of right action. Let your days be your Dharma. And let the goodness you plant today become the freedom you walk in tomorrow. Right action. Right now. This is the way. And it begins with you.